Welcome to It's About Time. This is where we challenge outdated higher education models and push for bold student-first reforms. Today we're talking about one of the biggest barriers students face, which is making college truly affordable. My guest is President Ashton, president of BYU-Pathway Worldwide. This organization is rethinking how degrees are delivered, priced, and assessed. Under Brian's leadership, BYU-Pathway has expanded access to learners around the globe with innovations like stackable credentials, 3-year bachelor's degrees, and ultra-low-cost programs like the $300 degree in Africa. His work is proving that high-quality education can be both affordable and sustainable, and I'm so excited to learn how. Brian, thanks for joining us today. I know that you just had shoulder surgery, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this from while you're in recovery, so welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to do it. It gives me something to do.
There you go. Well, we're going to talk about affordability today, and I don't think there's any better person to talk about this, given your experience with BYU Pathways and how you've tackled this issue of affordability, not just in the United States but across the world. And my first question to you is, what was the motivation for that? What inspired BYU Pathways to focus on affordability?
So we are sponsored by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and we believe that everyone is a child of God. And consequently, we think that, we believe that people should have a right to education. If you're a child of God, you have divine potential, and God knows everything. And so, if you have that potential, you ought to have the right to go and learn. And so we try to make that available for both our members and the friends of the church, people who aren't members but have that same desire.
That's fantastic. What have you found as some of the bigger barriers to lowering the cost, both domestically and internationally?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest ones was a 4-year degree. There's just a cost to that. We found that our students, who are mostly adult learners, needed to work. They're quite poor. We're up to over 80,000 students, with over 40% of those students in Africa. And if we put them in general education to start, they drop out because they don't see how that helps them get a job. So we start with the certificate first model. And what we found was that, so we do 3 certificates plus general education equals a degree. What we found is they were taking their elective credit at the very, very end of their degree. So many of them already had jobs. They had passed all their major courses. They'd done their general education. They had a pretty broad liberal arts education at that point. But, they were taking the easiest courses they could, and it just didn't make sense. So we went to Northwest, our accreditors, and just said, we don't think this makes sense. Will you work with us on it? And I should say our accreditors work through our partners, BYU, Idaho, and Ensign College. And so the degrees that are accredited by them are now 3-year degrees. And that cut 25% of the cost off just right away. So that was a big one. I'll tell you another couple of ones or 2 or 3 others that were really helpful. One was, we don't have a campus, and we're not trying to subsidize a campus. So we're a totally independent institution from the campuses. Now, we use curriculum that was developed for campuses. It's the same courses. It's the same assessments. Even in our 3-year degree, all we've done is lopped off the elective credit, but it's the same courses as they were taking before. And so not having a campus made a huge difference. We use only adjunct instructors. We're not a research institution, which really helps. And so, we're able to hire people from all over the world, and that helps lower costs too. We have instructors in Brazil. We have them in the Philippines, in the United States, and elsewhere. And so all of those things help. And then, the church, the other thing that we do, and This is a little bit unique to our church, but we have a lot of volunteers who are willing to help. And so we have about 4,000 volunteers who are willing to work with students, particularly in their first year, and give them mentoring, give them support. And then I guess the final thing is we have a number of mentors for our students, but we hire our own students to do that. And since most of our students now are international, we're able to hire international students to be mentors. And the hourly rate that we pay them is less than we would in the United States.
I get it. And the price point, we hear about the Africa $300 degree in Africa. Talk a little bit about that and both its evolution and how that might vary in different geographies. And
Sure.
how do you set those, and how realistic is it for others to think about kind of moving to really low price points?
Yeah. So we break on a variable cost basis, we break even around $15 per credit. So, in a 90 credit degree, obviously that's more than $300. In the U.S., our bachelor's degree costs about $6,300 for the entire degree. And then our church has just said, look, we'll subsidize where we need to. Most international countries come in a little better than break even on a variable cost basis. But in Africa, we do lose money, and the church has said we'll subsidize that. Or, on a variable cost basis, our students cover their costs here in the United States, and so that helps. But that's how we manage that. But it's not unreasonable to think that one could get a degree for $1,000, $1,500 internationally at least.
No, I think that's great, and I think that's an eye opener for some in higher education, and it's something that we all need to both even without a church-based subsidy, prices are low enough where we really are increasing affordability and access by these types of models by taking some of the cost out on the instructional side. I'm assuming that a good bit of this is asynchronous delivery, or is there a combination of synchronous and asynchronous kind of interactions?
There is a combination. Most of it is asynchronous, but in your first year, for example, we have you do a gathering each week it's synchronous. It's with other students. There's actually 2 per week. And they get to know one another. They feel like they're part of the university. They feel like they have friends. And that's important. Especially for first generation college students. Many of them they need that support. They need to know that someone is like them and that they're going through the same challenges they are.
Talk a little bit more about those certificates, the initial certificates. You talk about the importance of that and getting people moving in the right direction because they're relevant to their work. You talk about the ability to use that front-end experience to kind of lop off the electives on the back end. What are some of these certificates, and why do people find them attractive as a model?
Yeah. So when you need a job, when you're an adult learner and you need a job quickly because you're poor, in Africa, for example, 78% of our students, as of the latest data, when they join BYU-Pathway, are only getting 1 meal on average a day. And so they're anxious to work. And so if we can give them a credential that qualifies them for a job, say to be an executive assistant or to be a bookkeeper or to do social media marketing, those types of things, that allows them to start earning the money that allows them to eat more than 1 meal a day and continue to pay their tuition. So it's a stretch for some of our students to pay their tuition, and if we can help them get those jobs, they're able to stay in. Once we find that someone completes their first certificate, their chance of staying in the program goes up dramatically, and the chance of finishing their degree. So it's 3 certificates stacked together, each one leading to a better job, makes a big difference for them.
and then you work the general education requirements in after that or during that, or
Yeah,
some
so we start with something called Pathway Connect. It's a 6-month program where we make sure you have the skills to succeed. Some of our students haven't finished high school, and so that gives them a chance to do that. Some of them haven't. I guess they don't actually finish high school, but they get the skills they would need to be successful in university. Many of them haven't been in school for a long time. And so we teach them how to learn. We give them a basic, brush up on math and English and writing and all of those types of things. The curriculum is first life skills, then life skills. Oh, I've just forgotten. Life skills, professional skills, and then university skills. That takes 6 months, and then they get their first certificate in the next 6 months. In their second year, they do half of their general education plus a second certificate, and in the third year, they do the other half of their general education and the third certificate.
Well, it's fascinating. Fascinating. Now, I'm assuming that there's some investments in technology that are necessary in order to get to this lower cost. Certainly bandwidth issues in some parts of the world, as well as accessibility.
Yeah.
How are you addressing that, and how big of a role does that play in the delivery at this price point?
So there are actually foundations that help some of our students get computers, particularly in places like Africa, the Philippines, and the islands of the Pacific. So that where we have students who can't afford computers, that's a great solution for them. And these foundations have just kind of sprung up to help our students. So we're really grateful for those. Our church buildings, of which we have thousands throughout the world, generally have internet. They'll have a few computers that people can use. So that also helps. And we have, in a few cases, put Starlink in the building or provided a small computer center that people can use. But our students are pretty resourceful. And they'll borrow a computer. They'll find someone who has internet. They will go to an internet cafe, and they're pretty good about that.
So, what should we be looking for in terms of future innovations? Not necessarily tech-based, but can be tech-based. And what are you working on to continue to scale out and address this kind of price points, especially in areas where others in higher education who have aspirations to lower the price point might benefit from the direction you're thinking about?
Yeah. I don't know that this is as much about lowering the price point as it is, we'll do it at the same price point we do English, but we want to expand the reach. And so in late October, we're going to start classes in Portuguese in Brazil. And if that goes well, we'll expand it to the other Portuguese-speaking countries. And we've talked with our board about potentially going into Spanish. So that would, again, we believe everyone's a child of God. They have divine potential, and so we want to give them these opportunities. Thus far, all of our classes have been in English, but opening up Spanish and Portuguese just gives a lot of people the opportunity to get an education that they wouldn't otherwise get. And so that's the next step in this process.
Yeah, I think that's great. And, taking advantage of the translation tools now, UMass Global, we just launched in South America, Latin America, and in Spanish, and are looking at Mandarin next, and found it shockingly easy to make these translations and to find people that can support people in their native language. So I think you're gonna see a real uptake in interest in that space. We have already, and great alignment with your mission-driven approach. So I applaud you for that.
You and I need to exchange notes. I need to learn what you've learned. You should be teaching me.
No, it's all been within the last year. The speed that we're able to kind of make these kind of translations and put them on the ground is amazing, and the use of local talent at a lower price point, I think, is also something that resonates with us as we're moving forward. What other advice would you have? What kind of final advice would you have to others who are really committed to and it's not about price point exactly, it's about accessibility and in providing opportunities to especially harder to reach audiences. Kind of what's your kind of closing advice relative to that?
I think that you used the word I would use. You truly have to be committed to it. There's going to be lots of forces that are going to fight against innovation. They're entrenched interests that like the way it is. And so, we're a separate, the BYU system, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints educational system, has 5 different schools. We're very separate from those other 5 on purpose, because being separate allows us to do things we probably couldn't do if we were part of one of those other schools. So I think you got to be totally committed. You've got to be laser focused on it, and you really got to find ways to reduce your costs that you might not think of. Let me just share one example. We had a vice president of an academic vice president who came from Brazil, and he had worked in Brazil and Mexico and Spain. And he came in, and we thought we were really low cost. And he said, "Guys, I got to tell you, you're not that low cost. We did a lot cheaper."
It's all relative.
Yeah, that's right. For the U.S. market, we were low cost, but he gave us ideas, and we sought out other models, and that really made a difference. And I think now he would say we're low cost, but there's going to be other opportunities. AI is going to open up all kinds of opportunities.
Yeah, I think benchmarking against the local price points and accessibility issues is critical. We opened in India at $2,000 a year for an MBA, and it's affordable, but it's not cheap given their earning potential. And so I think focusing on that, and then the other issue you bring up that resonates with me is the level of independence that you have as an institution. We do at UMass Global as well. And it's not that others are burdened by the bureaucracy in ways that are unnecessary for the type of students that they serve in the sector that they're in. We need that level of independence to be able to reach working adults who not only need a low price point, they need a delivery model that's accessible and supportive and on demand in a way that it's hard for traditional institutions to get their head around. So I appreciate where you've taken this and where you're going with it, and it's great to have you on to talk about these things. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed it, and I want to learn from you about Spanish and Mandarin.
I think we're all learning from each other. That's when you know you're at the cutting edge. So I appreciate it. Well, thanks to Brian for his insights. And that's it for today's episode of It's About Time. But the ideas we've explored here go far beyond this conversation. Brian's work shows that affordability isn't a dream, it's a choice that institutions can make when they focus relentlessly on students. If you found value in this discussion, please share it with someone who cares about making higher education better for every learner. And join us next time for more bold ideas, candid conversations, and solutions that always put students first.